Hello dear viewers, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about the most important topic in the entire Zelda universe, something that will rock the whole state of the world to its very core. The existence of female Gorons, or rather the apparent lack thereof. I know, the struggles of the people fighting over 3 magic triangles might seem a little bit more important. Or how Ganondorf seems so focused on wiping out all life from Hyrule in the upcoming game. But no, let me tell you that this is fundamentally more important. So stop everything and join me as I take a deep dive into this terribly important topic. I'm Cornelius Belmont, and let's talk about female Gorons. Thanks for watching the video. If you like my content, please like and subscribe to the channel. I've recently started a Patreon. More on that at the end. A special thanks to these people for letting me use their assets. Spoilers ahead for the following games. Let's get into it. There is no instance I have been able to find of a female Goron being depicted in-game. Nor have I found the concept of a female Goron ever being brought up at all. In fact, it seems to pivot very much in the other direction, with the use of the word brother being the clear identifier when Gorons speak to one another. Looking around in Breath of the Wild, the most recent instance of them, of course, they again present themselves in much the same manner. This becomes more interesting when we see a set of male Gorons being allowed into Gerudo Town, despite them being in fact male. This is of course where a lot of the controversy comes from, given that their gender is being brought front and center along with some deeper questions. Simply put, if Gerudo Town only admits women, and male Gorons are allowed to enter without restriction, then are there in fact female Gorons at all? Surely the Gorons would be aware of the restrictions of the city. After all, there is a Gerudo in Goron City who actively buys gemstones to make jewelry from. One thing is clear though, which is that if Gorons have female members, which is to say specifically members of their species that act as one part of sexual reproduction, then the gender roles we see in other cultures simply doesn't exist amongst the Goron. It would seem that all Gorons are treated equally, with the nature of childbearing never being an issue in the social standing of the tribe. And, to me, that is actually a really comforting notion. Still, the question comes up in the community from time to time, and I myself recently had a bit of a talk with some fellow content creator about it. It is foolish to assume that Nintendo would ever give out specific answers over the breeding behaviors of Gorons. Of the Hyrulean races, they are the ones most fascinating to consider given that they are the ones rooted most deeply in fantasy. By contrast, the Zora have been explored if only loosely, and revealed that they lay eggs, and as such, certain behaviors can be assumed about their mating rituals. Not to mention that they also show clear sexual dimorphism between their genders. What is sexual dimorphism, I hear you asking? It is the individual physical differences that occur between the sexes. Things like a pronounced Adam's apple, and the hip bones that we see in humans. A lot more extreme cases occur in nature, like that of the anglerfish. More importantly is that there are hard genetic aspects of the sexes within a species, and I'm not talking about cultural constructs like gender identity. To be clear, my stance on gender identity is that it is a choice of the individual. Any offensive statements in the comments will be deleted. Now, back to what I was saying. Similar things are true of the Rito, which we can see in their feather patterns and coloring. The Gerudo are an interesting situation too, and one that is worthy of their own topic at a later date. But I will say that Breath of the Wild adequately shows that they take mates for the sake of their tribe's continued existence. The Gorons, however, it is never expressed in detail how children Goron come to exist, and the typical clues that we can see with the other races are all lacking here. Combine that with the lack of gender divide in their culture as I previously talked about, and we are left looking at them wondering if they are biologically male, female, or other. That being said, it is without question that reproduction is happening, so I would like to speculate about how this might be occurring. The first one is asexual reproduction. In short, Gorons may just grow new ones inside of themselves, and at a certain point, release the offspring in a process similar to childbirth. Such an aspect of them would mean that their typical romance relationship, courtship behaviors, and so forth would all be unneeded within their culture. Perhaps the feelings of male bonding, what I suspect Yunobo is feeling for Link in Breath of the Wild, is simply as deep as it goes. One might question that if Gorons are reproducing asexually, then what would be the purpose of the loincloths that they wear? Given that we have seen naked Gorons in other entries in the series, and that they are lacking any specific features in that area of their anatomy, I would suspect that this is merely a sense of fashion and nothing more. If Gorons did reproduce through male-female interactions, this would imply that sexual dimorphism between the two is so minute that amongst all the Gorons that we see throughout the series and of course in Breath of the Wild, that some percentage of them are in fact female. I clearly don't need to go into detail about how such reproduction would happen, but I would raise a question of why we never see any pregnant Gorons in the series, or at least ones that are explicitly called out as such. So, over the course of many games, this topic has never been brought up, and yet with the other races we see, it clearly has. I would float a third possibility for reproduction, which is that the common practices we associate with biological creatures may simply not be applicable here. It could be that Goron children come into existence by some other means that is external to the living members, and that, once found, they are then adopted into the tribe. Consider that they may just emerge from the mountain, and then they are welcomed into the tribe by the other members and adopted as children. As interesting a possibility this is, though, I do feel that Daruk's protection being passed down to Yunobo directly in Breath of the Wild definitively eliminates this possibility. Recently, a fellow content creator, Zelda Lore, pointed out to me that there was an interview with Tori Osawa back in 1999, shortly after the release of Ocarina of Time. Osawa was the head scriptwriter for the game. And in this interview, he confirmed that there are female Gorons, but that they are indistinguishable from one another and that they all use male pronouns. While this is an interesting find by the community, and the topic was a bit hotter in the summer of 2022 when this old article was translated, I can't help but to wonder why in the 23 years since then, why this concept has yet to show up in any of the games. Within fandom circles and on the site TV Tropes, the phrase Word of God is relevant here. In short, Word of God is when the creator or authority of a product gives a statement external to the media itself, and such statements are generally considered canon unless they conflict with the media. The question with this article, though, is if the head scriptwriter really has the authority to make such a claim about something in the game. Sure, he may have had a hand in what the NPCs say in the game, but does that mean that he gets to fundamentally decide a much deeper topic on the nature of these creatures with a one-off sentence in a 24-year-old magazine? Then of course there is the issue that since then, this topic has never come up in any of the games, almost as though it is purposely being avoided. There is a counterpoint to Word of God called Death of the Author. This states that when a work is complete, it needs to stand on its own merit. If the creators are able to insert whatever they want after the fact, but it isn't supported by anything we see in the work itself, then the common belief is that it should be disregarded until presented in a more official capacity. That is my stance with this interview. A single comment from a related source afterward, no matter how strong their headcanon may be, isn't enough to affect the lore until it is further represented. I felt this way about the assertion of Dumbledore's sexual orientation, despite J.K. Rowling's reluctance to include any such relationship in her books or the movies. I felt this way about the crude statement from Hirofumi Matsuoka, the original designer of Samus Aran, and his claims that she is transgender, even if in our modern times it would have been a really progressive situation. Needless to say, he played it off as a joke back then. Bringing this back to Zelda, though, one situation I would like to bring up with Word of God that is largely rejected by the community is the cop-out that Breath of the Wild takes place at the end of all timelines. That is nonsense, and brings into question if they even understand the time travel mechanics that they created. So, death of the author it is, until they give us something more solid to explain their works with. I guess we will see if they actually try to connect properly with their lore in Tears of the Kingdom, right? Fundamentally speaking, there are very few things we know about Gorons in this regard, but I'll leave off today by stating them clearly. Gorons are a race of rock creatures that consume stones in order to survive. They exist in a culture with male pronouns and all exhibit masculine traits about them. There are children Goron. Despite considering themselves male, the Gerudo allow them into their city and ignore the ban on males from all of their race. We have yet to see in any game any instance of Gorons giving birth, or the implications that they are carrying around children inside of themselves, or somehow raising them in a process akin to eggs. Simply put, those are the facts presented throughout the games. Could there be more to it? Certainly there is, and perhaps Nintendo doesn't feel comfortable going into those details on one of their more flagship titles. Until they provide a more direct explanation or evidence to the matter, though, everything else is speculation. As for me, I like the idea that they are asexual rock creatures with a monogender culture leaning in the direction of masculine traits. I like to think that as Gorons get bigger, they grow new Gorons inside of themselves and eventually release them to the world. And this is all speculation, or dare I say, just a theory. Regardless, thank you for listening to me talk about this for about 11 or so minutes. Okay, so I was being facetious when I said it was a fundamentally important topic, but it is an interesting one to talk about all the same. Now, I want to hear what you think. It's a single comment from a scriptwriter enough to set in stone the gender mechanics of an entire species, despite there being no supporting evidence in the next 14 games. Perhaps you share my thoughts that Gorons are asexually reproducing rock people. Maybe you have your own crazy theory. Let me know in the comments below. This channel is supported by Patreon. Patreon is the backbone of many YouTube channels, and considering that I am still small, I could really use that support. If you join up, you will gain access to my Discord server, where you can talk to me directly about concepts related to my videos. I can get pretty chatty at 2 AM, and I really like to bounce my ideas off people to help me flush things out. In addition, if I can get 10 supporters on there, I promise that I'll buckle down and put out a video once a week. Now I'm off to work on the next Let's Chat About podcast. All the same, you make sure to have yourselves a good day, and may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.